GM, are we live? Looks like we're live. Yeah, awesome. Great, everyone. Welcome to the first of many live streams that we're doing with Fuel. You're probably all dialing in here because of what was arguably probably the most exciting announcement in Fuel's history yesterday. Maybe just to explain why we're having the stream, I think probably the best way to do this is to get Nick to maybe just set the scene for Fuel, the Fuel project, as some of you might not even know what we do. And then after that, we'll probably just chime into maybe the story about the token. So Fuel, Nick, David, they've gone way back from obviously collaborating and building Fuel V1. And we have now fast forward to today where we have Fuel V2, or i.e. Fuel Ignition. The tokenomics, the details have all been released. So we'll probably go into the backstory as to how that came about, what the problems were. And then some first impressions from Swaraj, from Griffey, and Vitaly from Spark that we take talking about how they obviously have perceived this announcement. So without further ado, Nick, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, so first of all, to everyone joining us and to everyone kind of probably most likely hearing us for the first time and also hearing about the project for the first time, welcome. And, again, I think as Wayne mentioned, yesterday was a really big day for Fuel. It was a really big day for the project. So, we're all super stoked. Yeah, but maybe to give everyone a bit of context and a bit of history on Fuel, on the project, and kind of where we want to take everything. So we started Fuel a long time ago, like middle 2019. We built the first actual optimistic rollup to Ethereum that hit stage 2, so it's Fuel V1. And after that, we spent a few years building out what we call Fuel V2, or now which is Fuel Ignition, and our new Fuel architecture. So you can think about Fuel and think about what we do as trying to improve the entirety of blockchain architecture by providing a different model for how to build and how to use blockchains. So Fuel in and of itself is like a blockchain stack. So there's many blockchain stacks out there to build blockchains with. So Fuel itself is effectively like that. It's its own technology stack, and that means it has its own virtual machine, its own language, its own tool chain, its own development concepts, and a whole bunch of different things that it brings to the table. And this is similar to probably other stacks you've seen in the space. Fuel is a little different in the sense that everything we've done has been made from scratch. So we designed basically everything from zero. And it was after looking at, for quite a while, basically every other architecture and trying to find all the different bits and pieces that we really liked of a lot of different architectures and bringing them into one cohesive design. So you can think like the best of Solana, the best of Mu, the best of the EVM, the best of Wasm. All of these things were brought into a single architecture, and that's what we call Fuel, and more specifically the Fuel VM. And I'd speak to as well that like recently we released Fuel Ignition. So about it's like almost 2 months ago. Fuel Ignition is our layer 2 on Ethereum. And that we have every intention to bring into what we call like full stage 2 security. So that will be using Ethereum DA, bridge to Ethereum, full Ethereum security, but with the highest possible throughput we can give projects and users. So right now our throughput floats around 600 TPS. We'll probably get that much higher over the coming months. And the idea is that we want to give Ethereum sort of a supercharged layer to do all the crazy things that app builders actually want to do in the space. But on top of that, as of most recently, we just announced the Fuel token and the Fuel token design. And the core idea there is that not only do we want to progress decentralization and sequencing and decentralizing our sequencer for Fuel Ignition, but we also want to improve the overall UX of using blockchains by getting rid of what is effectively all that sort of fee model that you see typically with blockchains and that fee interaction, and trying to move to something a lot more competitive with Web 2 and a lot more competitive with the kinds of experiences that you have on the internet today. So just really overall making blockchain way better by getting rid of all of these fees and all of this kind of like silly pay per interaction system. So again, Fuel is a whole new architecture. We built everything from scratch. We have a pretty large team that does pretty much everything. So we're kind of a play, you could say, is very vertically integrated. So we build all of it. And the idea is that in vertical integration, we think we can actually build a much better infrastructure layer for everyone to build off of, and build something really, really unique that no one else in the space is really bringing to the table. So, so that's maybe a bit of background on just kind of the project and where we are today. So, just for everybody who's new, who doesn't know, maybe that's helpful for you.
That's amazing. So I think like before I bring in you and David to the conversation around what brought you guys to the token model that we have today with Fuel specifically, I maybe just wanted to check in with you and you, Nick, as well as you, David, just kind of how are you feeling? So like we still have a lot of work to do. We still have to actually go live and actually do the things with the token as well as the chain. But given the history that you guys have back from 2019 all the way to building Fuel V1 and collaborating together to where you are now, like what is the mental state at? Like where you guys at?
I'll let David speak first because I've been speaking a little bit.
Sure. I mean, I'm obviously feeling really good. We've been building. Fuel's been under development for a long time, so it's been like a crazy couple months where it was like less than 2 months ago. It was pretty recently that we actually got mainnet launched, actually getting some of our awesome applications like out, being able to kind of really try them with real money. We've got heads of two awesome projects, Griffey and Spark, on the call with us. And then the token coming out is like kind of I'd say it's like the end of the beginning. Kind of feels like we're still, there's still so much to build, but we've got all the pieces in place. We have a chain, we have a working virtual machine, a working rollup, and now we have a token. We have the basic like structures of our economic system on top of our kind of scalability system in place, and we've got real users, we've got real applications. So now we can really kind of like push things a bit forward. So it's good to kind of have the game started, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll just say, so from my side, it's been absolute hell trying to build Fuel this entire time. It's been an absolute disaster for my life. It's been an enormous amount of pain, and a significant amount of pain for the team. We've had a lot of ups and downs doing this. Basically, everything is against us, quite frankly, because we've designed our own architecture. We didn't pick one that was popular. We didn't pick one that other teams were building with. And it's really enticing to go pick something that might be popular in the moment or that might be picking up steam, for sure. And we see that, and we see that on the sort of business side. But on the side of like actually doing what you think is right and building the system you think is right and just going that way and absolutely dealing with the agony of trying to do that over a multi-year period. That's basically what it's been like. So, quite frankly, but at the same time, I think it's also super rewarding. The ecosystem, everyone who's stuck with us, everyone who's been building with us, there's been a lot of glass eating. There's been a lot of pain, but at the same time, like, there's a lot of grit to our team and to the ecosystem builders that we have. And you got to really like Fuel if you want to build on it. You got to really want to see sort of this through of actually trying to do blockchain this way. But I think it's also a super kind of crazy experience when it's actually working. And to Dave's point, like everything's actually starting to work. So all this time building a new virtual machine, a new language, a new a whole new client, a whole new way to do everything. It's now actually starting to stabilize and starting to become really foundational. And we're starting to have better expectations over it. And I'm sure, Suarez and Vitaly can tell you all the pain that they've been through just trying to build on this thing. I think it's getting a lot better, but it's also just, it's been a journey, I think, for all of us. But at the same time, it's super rewarding. You're sitting on your own it's our own architecture. It's completely different. It's completely new, and it's something we can chart the path for, and we don't have to wait for Anatoly to make a change, or we don't have to wait for, someone at Sui or Aptos to make a change. We can literally just, if we need something, we can go make that happen. So that's it's a crazy feeling to actually be able to do that. But yeah, maybe that tells you a bit. But I'm excited right now. I'm super excited. I think we've been through a lot, but yeah.
So maybe the question is, I mean, we've done everything from the ground up, and now arguably done everything from the ground up with the token as well. How did you guys get to this point? Like, clearly, Fuel's not another governance token, which is a really big plus. But we'd love to hear how you guys got to where we are today, how it came about, and yeah, let's dig into that piece.
I think Dave needs to speak to his personal journey with tokens, but particularly I think also just Dave and I have been talking about tokens for a long time. We've been talking about tokenomics for a long time. But Dave, why don't you tell everybody kind of your first principles or your thinking around some of this stuff? Because I think it's probably helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, first of all, I think it's interesting that, since pretty early days, we've been talking about a layer 2 token that is more of a utility token. There's a blog post. I don't know, Nick, when did that blog post come out? I think that was like 2021 or something.
A long time ago.
It came out a long time ago. And, it was diverging from the, what we've seen with a lot of other projects of this governance token, this valueless governance token. It lets you kind of vote over the upgrades or something like that. And, I've not to knock other projects, but I've seen a lot of that as a bit of a cop out, especially when it comes to kind of to infrastructure, to layer 2s. Tokenomics, I think, is this really amazing kind of whole new field that we've invented in crypto, which is we can we can use tokens to align incentives. We can use tokens to cover the cost of expensive resources. We can use it to cover risk. Me and Nick have talked a lot about how risk fits into tokenomics, how it fits into these economic models. So I think me and Nick both kind of came from different directions, but both wanted to see a token for Fuel that would really empower Fuel, that would be useful, that would be a core part of Fuel. Whereas in a lot of these ecosystems, the token is kind of it's the upgrade key to the system, but they also still have a multi-sig, so it's still secured by a multi-sig. So that's kind of my background, and also I think some of what I tried to kind of bring to some of the discussion that we had of coming up with tokens was looking at the world of DeFi, because I think we've kind of seen different generations of tokens. We've kind of got the layer 1 generation of tokens, which provides security. Not a lot has evolved there, but these are some of the most strongest tokens out there, the Ethereums, Bitcoin, Solanas. As I mentioned, we have kind of the layer 2, these governance tokens. And then also in DeFi, we've seen a lot of some DeFi protocols that use their token as a valueless governance token, but a lot of protocols that do really interesting things with their tokens that make them a core economic component of the system. And I wanted to see us take some of those ideas and apply them to the infrastructure layer and see if we can kind of power up our infrastructure in the same way that DeFi tokens power up those DeFi protocols.
Yeah, and I'd also say too, so as Dave was mentioning, there's kind of the first generation of tokens, which are effectively security and fee payer tokens specifically. So you use Ether to stake, and then you use Ether to pay fees. And Solana is similar. You use Solana to stake and you use Solana to pay fees. But the reality is the staking and the securing is very, very important. But the problem is that that's only one piece of the puzzle. There's a whole other piece, which is that users don't want to have to pay this. Users don't actually want to go through all the pain of having to go acquire somebody else's token to go use the applications. And when you use Web 2, you don't have that experience, right? And so sponsored transactions are one way to achieve this. And Swaraj, I'm sure, can say we're already achieving this with sponsored transactions already on Griffey. The reality is, though, is that you need an economic model underneath that's going to supercharge some of this. And when you have the supercharging happen, then basically you can eliminate some of that stuff outright, and that's just by sort of reimagining how the model is going to be built. But even when we were starting out and building on some of this from the first place, like, you don't want any user to have to pay fees, and you don't want any user to have to go through the experience of having to pay fees for an interaction with your application. It's very, very silly. And so getting rid of that outright, I think, is going to be sort of the next generation of tokens, or the next generation of infra that's going to really, really help bring blockchain into the kind of mass adoption category, because you get rid of that kind of horrible experience of having to go acquire something like ETH or something like Solana, for example, just to use an application. But yeah, maybe that speaks to it a little bit.
Yeah, so I think maybe it makes sense. I think what would probably help a lot of the people that hate reading, if you guys could potentially just give like the quick TLDR of what the token does, the baseline utility of what it can do, and obviously how this translates into basically bringing fees to zero. Yeah, I think it'd be quite helpful.
Yeah, maybe Dave, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's kind of two pillars to what the token, at least the way I looked at it, was Fuel's mission has always been to make blockchain, to make Ethereum more usable while still maintaining the values of decentralization. That's what we did by launching a rollup on Ethereum that we launched Fuel V1, the first like stage 2 rollup, which is it's fast, it's easy to use, it's cheap, and it's fully inherits the security of Ethereum. That's what we're aiming to do with Fuel Fuel Ignition as well. That we'll get to stage 2 proving. And Fuel is like a super cheap rollup. It's has very high performance applications. Great chain to use. When it comes to decentralization, one of the big things holding a lot of projects back on decentralization for all rollups is centralized sequencers. Almost all rollups today have a centralized sequencer. I think there's like 1 or 2 that have some level of decentralization. So by creating a permissionless system, by making this key component of block production on rollups permissionless, that's a huge step towards making the rollup just as decentralized as Ethereum is. And then the other component, one of the biggest UX hurdles forever on blockchains has been the need to pay fees, need to pay transaction fees. And so our intention is to use our token, our issuance, a token model to cover much of like the resource costs of a rollup. That's the execution cost, the state storage costs. And the nice thing about this is that those are resources that are generally becoming cheaper over time in price, right? Like technology like Fuel is driving down the cost of execution. It's driving down the amount of state that's needed for applications. There's a lot of other technologies. ZK will have some role here as well of kind of pushing these things down. So this is, I think, a really nice component of our token model, is that while some other applications, are trying to take in the revenue from the fees, from execution fees, they're saying, oh, users are going to pay fees to use our network. That's how we're going to make money. Instead, we're kind of saying this is kind of an expense of the network, but it's an expense that we're going to try to cover. And it aligns the incentives that as the technology improves, as it becomes cheaper and cheaper to execute transactions on a blockchain, that cost gets lower and lower. And so, what we're aiming to do is to make those actually free, get the cost of using the network so low that the token can actually cover those costs.
Yeah, maybe just to speak this a little more too. So Fuel's architecture will bring the execution cost down of executing transactions to like a very, very low amount. It's already really, really cheap. And it's like crazy, crazy low. But in order to bring it right to zero, so that users don't have to kind of think about it, what we want to do is make sure that like when we have the staking token working, such that you can take the yield or the additional kind of piece of this token, you can apply it in bonding to specific applications, and then effectively either through our builder model or through the actual application itself, those resources can actually go to covering the base usage or base costs of these applications. And then in exchange, some of these applications, some of these other systems will have tokens. So again, there could be, again, an exchange there for tokens themselves, but there could be also other models too. And it could really depend or be application specific. The applications will kind of dole out their resources in addition to people doling out their resources. But the idea is that let's make the sort of token a lot more interesting than, say, just the core staking token that you typically see. So trying to really ensure that we actually fix a lot more in blockchain than, say, just adding another layer, adding another security, or adding more decentralization. That's core. But beyond that, like, I want to see using Spark as like a thing that's free because of the way the fuel token works. Or I want to see that, like, even when I go and use an application, most of the time I don't need to think about fees. And the caveat here is that obviously when the chain gets full or super busy, yes, you will still probably need to tip. You probably will need to actually have some kind of tipping feature in addition to that. But if the chain isn't full and resources are not at max, then all that base usage can probably be covered by this sort of rethinking of resources. And again, you can think of layer twos or blockchains in general as they have a certain amount of resources. And we've been charging fees because fees are an anti-spam feature. But there's like 5 million other ways to resist spam than charging a fee. And so basically, fees themselves are kind of silly right now when we're charging like 0.0000 whatever, cents. It's like silly that would be what our anti-spam measure is. So instead of like using that as an anti-spam measure, because I can tell you right now, like, the fuel block producers made like nothing, like very, very little off of fees. So just because of how cheap it is. So basically, like, you drive the cost very, very low with the execution architecture, and then you finish it off by trying to rework the resources of the token such that for base usage on these applications, it should be a free experience, basically. So that's kind of the basic idea.
I think one thing I just wanted to add on there is that, this model of like the fees is this anti-spam mechanism, and it's in some aspect it feels almost a bit outdated. It's based on this model of like where everything kind of looks like Bitcoin with big public mempool, and just anyone in the network can be a miner and validate. If you look at Ethereum, if you look at most, especially Ethereum, but a lot of other blockchains as well, we have this whole supply chain of how a block gets produced. This is kind of what, Flashbots and team have kind of spearheaded on Ethereum. We have proposer builder separation in some form. We've got a few different builders. We've got this large network of proposers that are selecting different builders. There's private mempools. So there's a lot of steps in the process, and there's already a lot of anti-spam built in there. There's also already a lot of other economic components. Part of the idea of the fee that the user would pay, it's this tip to say, hey, this is why I want my transaction to be included. This is why you're incentivized to do it. There's a lot of other things that can incentivize that now as well. I think one interesting model, one of the few other blockchains that's actually kind of experimented with fee models is Osmosis, the DEX chain on Cosmos, where they basically said, instead of you having to pay a transaction fee, this is a DEX, you're already paying a trading fee to use the network. So if you're worried about anti-spam, if somebody's paying, again, 30 basis points on $1,000 trade, that's probably enough to say that this is not a spam transaction. And so the chain will kind of take that as their transaction fee. And what I think we're trying to do is to say that there's a lot of ideas like that. You can, have DEXs that use the trading fee as their anti-spam. You can have other applications that might use some NFT that you hold as some anti-Sybil mechanism. We're going to open that playing field up and let the applications kind of choose their own building, how they want to build their transactions, how they want to allow different transactions into the chain.
And so maybe as well, just if that got too technical for people, the fees go to zero, and we're going to send fees to zero. The whole system is going to be a lot better to use. When you make trades or use applications, you don't need to think about that, or that's the goal, is that you won't need to think about that stuff. And as well, just, if you need a way to think about at least the way I think about, the fuel token itself, you can think of it as basically like an execution token, or it's managing the resources of the chain. And that allows it to be this kind of system to manage resources. And we don't need to think about paying fees every single time to use a chain. And that's, the purpose of things. So it's trying to really solve that. It's trying to get at that. Because again, like when you're building with some of this stuff and you're building applications or user experiences, like it sucks to have a user every single time go and approve things, think about fees, think about their balances, think about all that sort of stuff every single time. And like, we all know we want to move to a sponsored model. We want to get away from this stuff. But now Fuel actually providing an economic model to move us away from that system and get to something a lot more interesting. Because everyone's going to have a cheap and fast chain, but do they have a free chain? Do they have a chain that's actually like basically at base usage going to be something that drives that experience down to something that's like really, really awesome. So yeah.
What I was thinking, maybe Swaraj, Vitaly, like just you guys have been kept in the dark on the token for quite some time now. You obviously had first impressions yesterday. Probably a lot of the concepts that we've just spoken about on the stream, you haven't even heard of us actually executing and getting to the point where we are. We'd just love to maybe just get a backstory as to what it's been like, how you found Fuel, and then obviously your first impressions of what was released yesterday.
Absolutely. So I'll introduce myself first. I'm Vitaly, co-founder and the CEO at Spark. We started building on Fuel in November 2022. Before that, I was building several projects within the Solana ecosystem. I was also early in Solana, by the way. And we met with Nick, I think it was October 2022 in Lisbon, and started chatting. My first touch on Fuel, I think, happened during the Lisbon hackathon. But like that winter in 2022, 2023, I was very surprised by the profoundness of how Fuel VM was reimagined, and by the details Nick has been putting into the work. I've only met, I think, this approach in a handful of projects in the entire crypto industry. And then over a couple of years, I knew that anything Fuel team designs will be almost close to, perfection. You can see how product complete Fuel launched. We have a pretty solid infrastructure. There are many other chains launching like all the time, and they are not even close. We have indexing, which is super important for trading related products, by the way. The data, the latency is never too low. The traders, you give them 1 nanosecond latency, it's still going to be too slow. So it's like we're always going to be thriving to improve this. And then multi-builders, multi-leaders, of course, it's all the necessary infrastructure which improves arbitraging across different venues, but that like can be a separate discussion. We have oracles, you can build like whatever derivatives you want, options, futures, perps, forex. Fuel is perfect for that today. And honestly, I'm constantly benchmarking Fuel and Spark, of course, against the competitors, because for us, the technology really does matter. We cannot just launch a basic product and offer a point program to our users. We actually, because Spark itself is a very lightweight architecture. I think I forgot to present Spark. So it's an on-chain order book. Because I was doing growth at Mango Markets right before Fuel, I kind of got used to the on-chain execution and order book-based perps. We just had to secure very solid indexing. Now we have Pangea providing real-time data. I think there will be like a Twitter space with Pangea in the near future, before Christmas for sure. We have NVO, who are providing the data to our UI at the moment. And we have Spark data relayer that sequences the transactions between the two to minimize the risks, of course. Spark itself is very lightweight architecture. Ethereans are funny. Every time I'm telling them, okay, so we took Serum, we got rid of everything we hated about it. Like, for instance, binary search tree on chain, they say, okay, I don't know Serum, I don't know Solana, but I know Ether Delta. You guys are like Ether Delta, right? I said, yes, but not really. I think this
okay.
industry has to focus on collaboration more, actually. Fuel, when I first have seen Fuel token design, again, I was very impressed by the profoundness of the approach, like how it was done. It's a really new token, and when you think about it for a couple of minutes, it totally makes sense. In Web 2, users don't have to think about paying any sorts of fees for the infrastructure of the application that they're using. You don't expect to pay your banks for transactions today. Like, guys, you have my money, make your revenue the way you want. It's not my problem, it's yours. And that's very true. Why should we approve every transaction? Why should we compromise the security because of that? It shouldn't be a user's problem, overall. And all these ideas, I think I've heard from Nick multiple times over the last couple of years. So definitely happy to be finally live. And again, I think this token design sets a mark for other projects to reconsider the revenue and economic models. Well, you got to push the innovation. It's never going to happen by itself.
Yeah, that's a solid point. It's funny. Actually, I was actually interacting with an ETH-based chain the other day, and the feeling of having to approve and then submit was painful. I'm just so used to using Fuel right now that it's I feel like a spoiled brat, to be honest, but it's how it should be. Swaraj, so I mean, you're obviously running arguably Fuel's first stateless order book based prediction market. What was your first impressions of yesterday? And in general, how did you come to find Fuel?
Oh, you muted.
Your mic is down.
Is it better?
Yeah, there we go. You're live. Go ahead.
Cool. So yeah, just introducing myself, Swaraj, the founder and CEO of Griffy. So when we were starting to build out Griffy as a full-fledged product, I had like three goals in mind, right? One was to provide a best-in-class order matching engine. The second was to provide like amazing Web 2 like user experience, and then the third was just kill it on distribution. Uh, we looked at like practically every chain that existed out there, and then I was just talking to Arjun, who had around that time joined Fuel, and Arjun said, my reasoning for joining Fuel is I want to see a centralized exchange being operational on a chain, right? And I thought, oh, this guy is speaking something which does not make sense. uh, and then he said, oh, you don't trust me, just look at the Fuel docs. I looked at the Fuel docs and I said, oh, this thing might work. Joined one of the Fuel calls that used to happen, I think, back in the day. And Arjun did like a presentation along with Wayne, I guess. And I thought, oh, this tech seems like something new. This tech is not another copy paste of some existing stack, and this could essentially work. Now, the best part about the Fuel ecosystem, even today, is that this is like a very, very tight ecosystem, right? People over here are like super collaborative. So I did like just DM'd everyone who was building on Fuel at that time. And I ended up talking with one of these guys called Walter, who's building Sale Exchange. And he actually sat me down and explained me the beautiful features that Fuel had to offer. And now I'm thinking in my head, oh wow, this is tech that works and a community that's super tight, right? In fact, even today, right? I think just a week ago, I think Vitali was explaining me GTM strategies, etc. So I think this is what is really good, because building something on a new chain is tough. You need people to support you. You need people to collaborate with, right? So these were two things that like essentially brought us to Fuel. I think the best parts about Fuel for us were we for the first time ever could build a order book that's actually on chain. So most of these order book dexes or even prediction markets operate in a way where they do off-chain order matching with on-chain settlements. Sure, it's something that has worked for the past few months or past few years rather, but it's not what we imagined it to be, right? We always thought about a world computer where everything could be performed on chain, and I think for the first time ever we have an answer to how we could do complex applications like order matching on chain. The best part about what enables Fuel to do that is essentially minimizing state bloat to its lowest, I would say. And we've practically used like predicates in combination with like the UTXO model to enable something uh, that wasn't possible for us anywhere else, right? Another thing that I think when I was starting to build on Fuel, we saw most of the projects like doing uh, like asking users to pay gas fees. And when I spoke with Nick, I think I said that, I don't want my users to pay fees. It should all be sponsored. And Nick said there will be a day when you would have zero gas fees. And yesterday was that day, right, where like it now feels that zero gas fees is a possibility. Of course, there's like
Did
still
you expect it to come this soon? Did you expect it to come as soon as it did?
so like I don't know what like how soon things should be expected, because I still remember like one more comment that Nick has made, which is someday you'll be able to pay with like Apple Pay for blockchain transactions. And now I'm thinking, oh, that day is not like years ahead. It's like just few months or other weeks, I would say. But I had never expected it to be like this soon. Uh, but yeah, I think that's what Fuel has done in the past few months. We've built a chain from scratch. We've deployed applications that like insane number of ecosystem projects building. You have bridges, you have oracles, you have indexers, and all of it like just works. So yeah, nothing more to add to uh, the praises for Fuel. But yeah, like ultra cool tokenomics model. I think uh, application based sequencing is something that uh, will enable a lot many more use cases than you would imagine. Essentially, uh, it would take us to a point where we could deliver a zero gas fee experience. Even today, like it's ultra difficult to spend $1 on fuel in gas fees. Like it's practically impossible for a user to spend that uh, very easily, right? But again, we could get that down to zero, and that's super bullish from our front, because from user standpoint, of course, the newer generation of blockchain users are going to start like this is going to now become the new norm of UX. uh, and that's great about Fuel. Oh, I forgot to mention like one very good thing about Fuel was the number of product feedback sessions that we've had. Like we had everybody from the Fuel team actually just testing out, giving us like insane number of uh product features, like UX improvements, etc. And I think that all added up to what the Fuel ecosystem is today, right? Every app that has been deployed on Fuel, I think, has been thoroughly tested, has been thoroughly UX researched, etc. And this is all thanks to Fuel team. I think with the tokenomics model that we have right now, it's going to enable a lot more builders to come and build on Fuel. It's going to enable more use cases to exist on Fuel. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, maybe maybe Wayne as well, just to say, like, I think so what's just for everybody listening, like what's crazy about what Swaraj and what Vitaly are doing is they're both building order books together on the same chain, and they will have a lot of possibility for interoperation, and the assets and everything between them can interoperate thanks to both like Fuel's UTXO model, the way that things actually work on chain. There is a future where you could have something like a Hyperliquid sitting beside something like a Polymarket on the same chain, and it all works. And not only that, but the users don't pay any fees for it, and they just use it, and it's just on the internet. And this is sort of the future that we want to see, and that's secured by Ethereum, and it has the access and liquidity to Ethereum liquidity. And on top of it, you don't need to switch wallets. You don't need to do all this crazy stuff that you typically have to do with a new ecosystem. You use MetaMask, you use the existing wallets that you're used to, but you come onto a single experience and it all works well. And it has the throughput and it has the capability to do that. So that's the possibility or the potential that we're going to see. You don't need layer threes. You don't need this other stuff. Just do it within the same execution environment, and having an incredible experience for users that's like really seamless. We want to get there with all of these different things. We want to make that a reality. And maybe as well, I can speak to, because I saw some questions in the chat. I could probably speak to some of these. I'll just try to be as careful as I can. But basically, we are launching within the next 2 weeks. So just everyone hold tight. Anyone asking about a specific thing that I know everyone's asking about, we're launching in 2 weeks. So just, put the pieces together. I'm not going to tell you the specific date, but our targets for the next 2 weeks. And as well, in terms of, I saw some comments about community versus community expansion, etc. Again, Fuel's community is amazing. Our NFT holders, everybody's fucking awesome. Like everyone's really, really great. But that being said, we're also small, so we do want to, have this sort of moment to do a bit of community expansion before we kind of go live and launch with everything. We think this is really the best for both just like the project's trajectory and where we want to take everything. But I'm pretty stoked about it. And again, to like I would say the loudest group in the community, which is clearly our NFT holders. We are very aware, and we just all I would say is just hold on for some announcements this week. So yeah.
Nick, we actually have another question here that somebody raised on Twitter, just saying like, based on the token model, how essentially does Fuel make profit? So how do block producers make money in this low to zero fee market?
Yeah. So the thing is, the idea is not that underlying infrastructure still needs to be paid for. So Ethereum's still going to charge DA fees. There's still some fees to running operations and doing things. That's always going to be the case. But the question is, do your users have to always pay them? Or do your users have to be the bearer of those fees directly in every interaction? And the answer to that is absolutely not, because as you can see already with Griffy, right? When I go and use Griffy right now, everything's already sponsored. The Griffy's paying for those fees. But wouldn't you want a chain where instead of the applications having to do all that work themselves, it actually just gets kind of taken care of, and the builders actually do it at the base level, and it's all kind of taken care of? So that's the future that we definitely are aiming at. In terms of you'll see when we go live, we'll have some examples of how this works in the short term. But the idea is that builders right now are charging fees not to make money. Builders are charging fees to have spam resistance. And so if the chain gets really busy, the fees go up. But otherwise, at base usage, like the fees are very, very low. So the only reason you would have them is for spam resistance. Now, if Griffy or Spark or anyone else just runs their own spam resistance, and then the staking yield and some of these other things are basically accounting for some of the underlying cost through bonding and through some of these other mechanisms, then basically the builders will get paid. They'll get paid in their own system with bonding. Griffy and Spark will run as normal and resist spam, with a basic server or some service or something like that. The whole thing will actually function and work. But in reality, we don't need to charge these stupid fees anymore, because the builder is now building based upon the bonding and the resourcing and the resource allocation of where the token and the yield is. And the applications are incentivizing that. So we'll have more on how we do that in kind of the coming days. But what we've done is taken some of the really popular DeFi models, but applied them to chain resources. And so in doing that, it's a different philosophy to how to handle fees in general and trying to get rid of that. And it can even be used beyond just fees and can go into things like liquidity and some of this other stuff after, and open up whole new markets for different projects after. But right now, the main thing is just like, let's kind of transition all the apps on Fuel over to this other system in the short term. And let's kind of get the experience down to a feeless experience. Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm just conscious of time, and I think maybe we can just close out with a few questions. I think the other one is maybe a little more lighthearted, just to prove that you guys are indeed human and not sentient AI. But if you guys weren't in blockchain, like what would all four of you be doing right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll let everyone else speak first. Maybe Dave first.
If I wasn't in blockchain, but I was still in tech, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm super stoked about blockchain. I'm the one that, like, I don't know, I've had to give the talk of why I think blockchain is like cooler than AI a few times. So In tech, I'm not sure. Outside of like tech in general, I love like video production, film production, something I'd probably be making. Like at some point I want to go into like making like documentaries or something, but that's
Yeah, you
That's it.
definitely give off that director vibe, dude. Vitaly, what would you be doing? Probably surfing and running.
I'd be doing fintech AI, not blockchain. If not tech, honestly, no idea. Surfing and running will always have a little bit of, well, space in my life.
Swaraj?
So like the second love of my life is after blockchain is DevOps. I think there's a bunch of things that need to be optimized there. So it would be DevOps. If not for tech, tough question. Like entire life has been just tech. Maybe journalism would be something that would interest me.
Yeah, if not for blockchain, for me, I think I would want to work on, if it's tech, I would want to work on like CPU chip design, or trying to use new materials to build CPUs, something like that, or trying to use new materials to build computing chips. If not that, goat farming. I think I'll just do the goat farming. Yeah, just a small hut on a hill with some goats would be fine for me. Yeah.
I even know
I think
where
everyone-
you're doing that.
Sorry?
Where would you be farming the goats? Like what
Well, that's the
country?
thing. I don't want to give away the location, because then it's,
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course.
you're basically doxing yourself if you even say. I think somewhere in the Mediterranean, so it's not too cold, you know, and yeah, just like a a group of goats. Yeah.
I think everyone who works in tech secretly wants to run away to do some type of rural farming or
Yeah.
herding or something
I
like
just
that.
go
Like
to
everyone
Asia,
just
everything. That's it. Then you come back and keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
go to where?
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Cool guys. Well, I think we can kind of call the call there. But thanks to everybody for joining. I hope the information that you got today from everybody on the call was super exciting and insightful. We will obviously be doing this on a more regular occurrence. We want to do more live streams. We want to get you more involved. We want you to be a part of this journey. We've been building this still for such a long time that, you know, going forward into the new year, we'll be doing some Sway sessions, some technical focused walkthroughs, so people can get up to speed with Sway and maybe the deeper level stack, such as tooling and everything in that such. But then we'll obviously have our ecosystem community calls, which we've been having internally. We're not going public. We want you guys to be involved and feel everything that we're thinking at the same time. So yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate everybody's time, and we'll be back soon. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Guys, ciao.
Bye.